Several thousand years ago, when white men were still living in caves um, in Europe, wearing the skins of their kill, black people in Africa were building civilizations. The black people in Africa are the founders of philosophy, music, art, literature, architecture. They were building great cities, they were building empires, they were building civilizations. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt were black. They were predominantly from a country at the time called Nubia, which was south of Egypt. And as their influence spread north into Egypt, they ultimately took, took control of ancient Egypt and ruled ancient Egypt for several thousand years until the Europeans came in and conquered ancient Egypt and established their own rule. Now, in the year 330 BC, Aristotle, along with Alexander the Great, who was his student, went to Alexandria, Egypt. They entered the library of Alexandria and they pilfered and stole a huge number of books and scrolls, detailed information of everything that mankind had possibly conceived of up to that point. They took all that, took it back to Macedonia, where they basically plagiarized it. Aristotle and some other Greek philosophers all poured through the information, rewrote it with a European twist on it, took credit for it. So over the course of the next 2,000 years, all this information was forgotten. Um, the original authors of this information, of these scrolls, faded into the darkness of history. The true history of what is now called Kemet was forgotten. It wasn't until the late 1960s in the United States when some African American activists rediscovered this information and started a school of thought called Afrocentrism. And this is where they bring forth this information to the modern world and tell the truth about what happened several thousand years ago when the black culture, history, and philosophy was basically stolen by white Europeans. This philosophy of Afrocentrism is taught openly at several universities in the United States. Um, the professors that teach this are all tenured, and they put forth their thoughts and ideas as to what actually happened in the ancient world and how blacks were denied their history by whites. In the late 1960s, there was a strong black nationalist movement. Um, Black separatists, black pride. Um, these were the Black Panthers came of this. In 1966, in New York, uh, Kwanzaa, the holiday, was established. Um, it was established so that blacks would have their own unique holiday to celebrate African culture. The word Kwanzaa is Swahili for fruits of the harvest. So this was made in 1966. In 1967, some of the same thoughts and ideas and philosophies that led to the invention of Kwanzaa led to what's called Afrocentrism. And what that is where blacks pretty much revise history to suit their own needs. Um, the biggest example of this is the history of ancient Egypt. Now, Afrocentrism teaches that ancient Egypt was ruled by the blacks, by black pharaohs, and that the population of ancient Egypt was actually black. The problem with Afrocentric studies is that it's basically stealing the culture, history, and heritage of another people. By saying that blacks ruled ancient Egypt is doing a dishonor to the people of Egypt. By saying that blacks developed philosophy, architecture, mathematics, language, all of this, while Europeans were living in caves and hunting with sticks at the time, is doing a discredit to Caucasians, to white people, to Europeans. Afrocentric studies and African studies in public universities are funded by taxpayer dollars. The people that teach these courses are tenured professors. They basically can't get fired. They can say whatever they want. They can teach whatever they want. And what they're teaching, this revisionist history, is a lie. And it's revisionist is all it is. The idea of Afrocentrism, like I said, came out in the late 60s. Basically, you got a bunch of pissed off black guys that got together, and they're separatists, they're racists. They got together, they didn't want to celebrate white man's Christmas, so they made black man's Kwanzaa. They didn't want to subscribe to the idea that they're from sub-Saharan Africa and ancient Egypt was actually ruled by Egyptians and not blacks. So they just make their own history. The thought and idea that Aristotle and Alexander the Great went to Alexandria, Egypt, which was ruled by blacks at the time, stole all their information, took it back to Macedonia, and plagiarized it is ridiculous. The biggest problem with that is the city of Alexandria was founded in the year 331 BC. The Library of Alexandria wasn't even around yet. This is revisionist history. This is along the same lines as Holocaust denial. People that say the Holocaust never happened, or that only maybe 100,000 people were killed and not 6 million. It's the same thing. The problem is when students go to universities and colleges and they're taught this by these tenured racist professors, they believe it, because why would a teacher teach something that's not true? So they believe it, they subscribe to it, and it starts spreading. It's stealing someone else's culture, and it's not right, and it needs to be called out for what it is. It's preaching and teaching hatred and racism. It's alienating blacks from society, and it's being perpetrated by just a few angry black guys who are racist. They are racist. These are the same people that developed the Black Panthers. It's the same mindset. So it needs to be seen for what it is. I recently posted on YouTube a video called Grand Theft Culture, which talks more in depth about the stealing of the ancient Egyptian culture and heritage by angry black guys in the United States. Since I posted that, I have been inundated with hate mail from blacks who are calling me racist and uneducated, trailer trash, I'm white trash, I'm a stupid faggot cracker, I don't know nothing, several comments about my family. But I haven't had one logical dispute, one rebuttal based on information. The, I've had one person argue with me that because of the way ancient Egyptians' hair is portrayed, long, black, and in braids, that's black guy's hair. That's black man's hair. And I tried to explain to this guy that the ancient Egyptians actually shaved their heads because they had problems with lice and parasites. And they wore wigs, or the upper parts of society wore wigs, much like they did during the Renaissance in the 1700s with the powdered wigs. And of course, I'm a racist because I said this. And, who am I to deny the black man his heritage? And, well, this isn't the black man's heritage we're talking about. This is Egyptian heritage. This concept of black ancient Egypt is a lie. It's a disservice. And the more it's allowed to spread, the worse it gets. I don't care if people call me a racist. If I see an injustice, I'm going to call it out. And this injustice is being perpetrated by racist black Americans. Who else besides black Americans believe that ancient Egypt was ruled by blacks? Do the Egyptians believe that? No. Do blacks in Europe believe that? No. It's right up there with Kwanzaa. It's something to make black people feel better because they have such a shitty past. I have no regrets about that. I never owned a slave. I don't know anybody who did. I definitely don't owe black people reparations for anything. And basically, I'm tired of being called a racist because I'm calling black people out for lying and stealing someone else's culture. The Reverend Al Sharpton, even, is one of the people that says that black men were building civilizations and discovering philosophy and all this while the white men were living in caves. This is a leader of the black community, but nobody disputes that. Nobody calls him out. That's the same thing as, Islamic extremists blowing up buildings and mainstream Muslims not condemning it. Why? If you know something is wrong, say so. If you know something is broke, fix it. Don't help perpetrate the lie by denying it. People get very up in arms when other people deny the Holocaust. This is the same thing. And it's wrong. Ancient Egypt was not ruled by black people. It's not my fault that blacks were treated like trash in the past. Honestly, it's blacks' fault. Yeah, I know. Everybody just said, oh my God. But it's true. When black tribes in Africa used to have tribal battles, they would capture the enemy. They would sell the captives to the Portuguese slave traders. I never bought or owned a slave. I never held anybody in bondage. I don't know anybody who has been held in bondage, and I don't know anybody that has ever owned a slave. Blacks sold other blacks into slavery. Get over it. It happened. Okay, if you want to invent a holiday to make yourselves feel better, go for it. Hey, happy Kwanzaa, whatever. But don't steal somebody else's culture, history, and heritage to try to make yourself feel better. That's not right.